I got KP Infinite next because he's on my pinned list next. I can move him up. That's really cool that I can do that.
I had like 3 separate questions that I've been cycling through before this moment. So because everybody's been asking different ones, but I think I'll just stick with the original one. Firstly, Fabi, great to meet you. I first learned about you with around the same time that I got back into things kind of full time, right? So around your time that you got in the World Chess Championship. So this question is actually about opening preparation. And it's fair to say that you've got a reputation as being somebody who is just you come booked up, you're ready to go. There have been profiles that characterize you almost like Botvinnik, who was somebody who produced absolute dossiers on people. But my question kind of takes the form of what is the difference? Where is the difference between being prepared and playing chess? So, I mean, and to kind of buttress this question, so you returned to the board in the candidates 2020, and the first thing you did was you just took MVL apart because you had spent so much time working over his Najdorf prep. That's a fair assessment, right?
Yeah, that's fair for that game, sure.
So then when you returned to, I think it was the FIDE Grand Swiss, where you had a game against Maxim Chagayev, you just again went full automatic, and it almost seemed like you were taking him into the same exact line and preparation and ideas. So, where do you think the meta is going as far as, we're no longer starting the game on move 1. We're starting the game on move 14. We're starting the game on move 20, right? Like, we're out of book, like, now, as opposed to all the way down the line. And how do we, as, aspiring players, sort of keep ourselves from falling into the trap of being over-prepared when we should just be trying to figure out, don't blunder a piece.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And it goes back also to the previous question in some ways, which is that, yeah, preparation is important at certain levels. It's super important. And we know that, players who play the World Championship, like we saw last World Championship, they come with a ton of ideas in the opening because they want to be the one to get the first surprise in. And they're just trying to increase their edge. It's like they're both super strong players. They're capable of winning good positions. They're capable of losing bad positions. But they just want to get that slide out edge on their opponent because they know that they're super close in level. That isn't going to bring the same dividends to the vast majority of players because for them it's very small nuances they're trying to improve on, and for most people games will come down to serious mistakes that happen in the middle game or in the end game, and they might not necessarily be blunders. It could be, of course, that if you hang a piece, it doesn't matter how many good moves you made in the opening or in the entire game, because one mistake can entirely spoil it. But it could also be positional mistakes, not understanding the position, getting tired at the end of the game, mistakes well into the end game. So there's a lot of places to improve before you want to focus on the opening aspect. It's just that for top players, they've already worked on most of those aspects, and now they feel like their best chance of improvement and keeping up with other people is on investing in opening work. And the other thing is that if you want to completely avoid opening preparation, there are ways to do that. I think at pretty much every level. One of the let's say revolutions in chess recently has been that you don't just have to play main lines, and there aren't just a few things that are playable or good openings. It used to be that people were principled. They thought with white you should play e4 and go for all the main lines and try to beat your opponent in the opening. And I know just from speaking to players who were at their peak in the 90s, or earlier than that, that they basically felt like, your opponent plays e4 and there's almost nowhere to run to with black. And things have changed massively. Like computers just taught us that pretty much anything is playable in the opening. You can play e4 and that's a legitimate way and all the main lines, or you can play knight f3 and b3 and that's just as legitimate an approach. And that's just a stylistic difference. If you want to go for direct lines and try to put pressure on your opponent, try to let's say take advantage of his lack of knowledge or her lack of knowledge potentially in the openings and try to get as big an advantage as possible, you can do that. That's one approach. Or if you want to play more of a control system like the London, like d4 knight 3 b3, d4 knight 3 g3, you can do that too. And it's just a different approach. So the best advice I can give is just to know your whatever system or opening you play, to know it well, rather than to think like everyone's playing the Berlin or the Marshall, so that's the right opening to play. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think you can play the Marshall successfully, or the Berlin successfully, or the Taimanov successfully. All these openings are inherently playable, not just from a subjective point of view, like I know it well and my opponent doesn't know it as well, and I'll have a leg up on him. That's important, but also from an objective point of view, we found out that a lot of things which were previously considered dubious or unplayable are actually fully legitimate openings. So chess has actually been enriched a lot in how computers taught us that you can approach the game from the opening to the middle game in a huge variety of ways. It's not like people used to think that there's a certain few openings that are good and you should play those. Now it's people realize that you can basically play anything, and you can look at the tournament going on now, the FIDE Grand Prix, and see that every game has a different opening. One game is a French, like today Bacro played the French against Nakamura and got a good position out of the opening. There's Catalans. I think it's a testament to the richness of chess that people can approach the game in any way, and it works out fine.
For sure, it's kind of like everything's playable until you don't know how to play it.
Yeah, if you don't know how to play something, whether it's a great opening, or even like there are still of course some dubious openings, but if you don't know how to play against them, they're still going to be super tough to face. It's I know that from personal experience. You play against a guy who's playing the Alekhine, and you think, well, I mean, we kind of know that this is not the best opening in the world, but that doesn't mean it's easy at all. And if you look at Magnus, he's played dubious openings with success because he tries to learn something about them, tries to find out where people tend to make mistakes, and it's a subjectively playable approach as well.
Yep. And it's funny. I think that a lot of the conversation about openings, in some ways, are dominated below certain levels. Partly because I always say it's the thing that people feel they're most in control of fixing, and it's the easiest thing to jump to from one to the other. When the reality is, even at the highest levels in the World Chess Championship, Jan Nepomniachtchi did not lose the match to Magnus because of the opening, right? And at the highest levels of chess everywhere, blunders are made because of other things. And I think generally people don't want to put in the time to do hours of endgame study or really solving puzzles. And that's coming from the guy who's guilty of doing everything he can to gamify the chess experience. People love puzzles because we've made them fun, and they love that they're 2,300, even though they're, maybe 14 or 1,500 in chess, right? So there's a part of that we invest in to try to keep people interested in chess. But the bottom line is, like, real improvement doesn't necessarily come from doing what's easy. And it's easy to switch the opening and like learn new moves, right? And I think that's a really hard thing to remember, but true. So anyway.